Email from Bob May, he will not be here tonight. I didn't get anything from Darlene, so I don't know. But if she comes in, she comes in. All right, I will call this meeting to order, and please stand for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
One, two, all right. First thing on the agenda is the minutes from our last meeting, August 23rd. Few minutes to look them over.
I see a typo.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of August 23rd.
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded to accept the minutes. Are there any changes, corrections, typos?
I
Any
did notice
issues?
a typo in item 3, minutes from last, just doubled up some words there, so I'll make that correction and send it back out.
Oh, okay, I see, I got you.
Today's the 6th.
Is there anything else? Anybody catch anything? Any other questions? Hearing, seeing none? Bev,
Yes.
Julie,
Abstain?
Paul,
Yes.
Will,
Abstain.
and yes.
Okay.
The next thing is the budget versus actual. It was sent out today. I don't know if everybody caught it, that Kelly will be out until the 18th, I believe. So, I also copied a page out of the FY18 budget book with the numbers, with that new
Yeah.
chart of accounts. That will come up in those answers to our questions from our last meeting, so you can kind of, excuse me, when you see 120, 130 unnamed, if you refer to this. There is a second, a more detailed explanation, but I was running a little late. I will print that out for our next meeting.
Do we know which of these figures was voted at town meeting? Does anyone know?
I would have to, off the top of my head, I'm not sure. I would have to print out the town meeting report and look.
All right.
Because it's not in detail anymore like it had been in the past, so it's,
Convenient, huh?
Wonderful. It goes along with this. Yes, Will?
If I may, Mr. Vice Chair. Today's report, the budget versus actual, to me, I think it's a travesty for our accountant and our administrator that they can put out such a document and state that the town voted for this type of document with less information on it than previous. They've consolidated stuff so that there's no detail that it's available to end up looking for either us or the members of the community. And this basically makes our job much difficult. If the voters of this community are really interested in their town government, and at times it looks like they are not, then this type of lack of information to the detail level and our ability to take and look at this and go over it and feedback, as we have done in the past, is going to end up basically creating an issue here with less transparency to take and end up seeing what the finances of this community are. I mean, and that's, to me, that's not good for the community. It's not good for us to take and end up reviewing the finances of the community as we should. I mean, in my estimation, we have been being shortchanged over the last couple of months with the interim administrator who has ended up cutting back on the amount of information that we get and how we get it. He's been in situations in other communities where he has done this and they have run him out of town. And I think that the selectmen are missing their opportunity to take and end up getting a full-time administrator and get this town turned around. I mean, that's my opinion as to where we're headed here overall. I'm very disappointed in our selectmen that they will allow this type of thing to happen overall.
Mr. Chairman, I very much concur with you. This was the second one that we've gotten to this, and as you will see in the questions that the committee voted for me to ask, and the answers that we received, it's disturbing, it's hard, and when I go to a selectmen's meeting, or if I watch them on the TV, they talk about transparency and open governance and all of that, and then when it comes to town finance, and again, if any citizen wants to know something, I believe they have the right to see it, and sometimes I also concur, I wonder if they really care about the spending of their money. But if someone does, you can't even look in the town meeting report, minutes certification from the town clerk, because it's gone from detailed to basically a summarized outline. I thought, like the health insurance and other things, that we don't look and get a clear picture as if they paid the lump sum, which saves the taxpayers a chunk of money.
Yep.
Versus if you make like pay over the quarters.
Yep.
We can't even get that detailed information. It has always been in the budget versus actual up until the previous month's one that we got. It was on the end of 2017, the end of the year one. It had always been in here up until the August one, which is why at the last meeting, we sent questions. We finally did get answers, and it's a very they're slowly subtracting, taking away the amount of information that we get and that citizens and can get, and it's just, if now we're almost to the point where we have to make another request, or we're gonna have to individually do freedom of information, public records. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's going in a good direction.
Yep, because I looked at this, Mr. Vice Chair, and said that if we want any detailed information, we're going to have to ask for every one of the departments to get that detail. And that's time-consuming for us. It's going to be time-consuming for the accountant, and I see the administration of this community telling the employee that they don't have time that they can end up doing that. And especially when now we have an assistant accountant, which we should have plenty of time that they can end up getting to the detail that we need. And the selectmen should be looking at the detail also. They made mention of it at one meeting, and they have done nothing. The citizens of this community have to end up understanding that the only thing between us as far as the finances of trying to correct things and the administration is, and we've been belittled by the selectmen in the past. I'll talk about that on another issue. I am highly upset on how this whole process is going in this community. We might as well not have an administrative advisory committee or finance committee and let them do what they want, which is very devastating. We're supposed to be the checks and balances of this community. And every Massachusetts community, the advisory, finance, and warrant committee, all the same function, manage and look at these finances that they can help out the citizens because they can't see the detail. If we can't see it, they can't see it. It's not doing them any good for us that they can even make recommendations. They cut it down for the fact that we've got a bylaw that says that we're supposed to have a separate line for us to take and make our recommendations, and that was left out at the last annual town meeting. I'm getting really tired of this. If we can't end up taking and voicing our opinion about what's going on in this community and change things, then the community is getting screwed. I'm sorry that they can end up saying that. To the voters out there that listen to this, you best end up taking and grabbing a hold of what's going on in your community, or else you're going to end it in the long run. You might as well not have us sitting here and looking out for your interest.
Can I say-
Period.
It's almost to the point where there's no point in having a town meeting either. It's just, I echo your sentiments and your concerns. Yes, Beth?
I understand how Will feels, and I don't blame him, and it's true. I think the last probably 4 years have been about the worst I've ever seen the town, but that ain't saying much, because, as I've said before, we have had severe financial problems since 1999. We will not get better. The town does not have a penny in savings. It doesn't have much in stabilization. If the 85 or 87,000 that Carter wanted to take out at that town meeting,
85.
if the voters had allowed him, we would have nothing. Now, this is payback. I do believe. I had a talk with Carter tonight about their open meeting complaints. They've dropped those. And I said, no, I don't think you should drop them. Let them go forward. I know why they won't let them go forward, because none of us did a thing wrong. They want an advisory board that's gonna go along to get along. And we have had them in the past, and that is why the town is in terrible shape. That's why our finances are a mess, our roads are a mess. It will take us decades to get on our feet again. We have no equipment. We have thrown so much money away, and it's not gonna get better. I think the only people we could go to is the DOR, and let them have a talk with our officials, our elected officials, because they told us to get along. I have no problem with getting along. But you've dragged us through the mud, and then, you conveniently drop all these issues that you had? Oh, how nice. No, that's not okay. I work hard for the people in this town. So do these people. We're probably the only ones that really are working for everyone. The old people, the young people. I am afraid we will have a town with empty houses because people can only absorb so much. But you gotta pay attention. Nobody else is gonna do it for you.
Julie,
Well, I can't disagree with anything that's been said so far tonight. I think a way forward would be to contact the Department of Revenue, forward them this budget to actual format, okay? As well as this document that you handed out. Nothing agrees, okay? And we don't have the level of detail that we need to do our job. And ask for some guidance and solutions, because I'm not gonna butt my head against that wall anymore.
would you wanna put that in a motion?
I so moved.
I would be willing to meet with those people. I don't
Okay,
care where we have to go. If we have to go to Boston, I'll go to Boston.
all right, we have a motion, is there a second?
Second,
All right,
One discussion? You ready
we
for
have a
this?
motion and a second, who would you like, how would you like that to be, need a
handled.
designated person to send that? Would you want that in your motion? I mean, if the committee's gonna do it,
well,
someone,
You have,
I will do it, if you wanna put that in the
yes,
motion.
okay, with the vice chair to execute the contact, how's that?
All right, just, okay, motion made and seconded, discussion.
Yes, Mr. Vice Chair. For them to take it end up, when this was sent out to us, to say that the town voted for this type of budget to actual is ridiculous. That's really overstepping anything that the town has ended up doing previously. That's an excuse as to how they wanna end up cutting back the information.
Right,
It's taking in expounding on what Bev said. I was going to end up holding that discussion for a little later. But the open meeting law against this, the members of this committee, I sat and I looked at both blogs. I had plenty of time to take and end up doing while I was recuperating here. And I looked at them, I looked at the selectmen's meeting, I ended up looking at other communities and how it's addressed, and for them to take and end up trashing members of this committee the way they did, and then drop it, tells me that the rumor that I've heard was they went to the AG, and the AG told them that they didn't have a leg to stand on as far as pursuing this and sending it to them. Because if they had, I would, as a citizen, never mind on the committee, as a citizen, I would have expected them to take and end up sending that to the AG. Regardless of if it was against members of my committee here, that should have been sent to take and end up putting that to total rest for the community. This way here, by them dropping it and saying they want to move along to get along, is bullshit. That is one way to take and trash this committee, to take and end up making this whole committee, and I say the whole committee because there was only 4 members. There was other members of this committee that didn't participate in that, to take and end up trashing us as a committee when we're trying to end up helping the community is not very good. It's not very good for the community. They're just trying to take and end up making it so that if we make recommendations that don't agree with them, that the community is going to end up saying, well, look what they've done in the past.
No.
That is ridiculous. If they, like I said earlier, if they don't want, if this community doesn't want an advisory committee, then they should vote it out. But Mass General Law says over $1 million, this community has to have an advisory committee or finance committee, and they're supposed to present the budget. The selectmen in themselves created an issue by passing a warrant article that was in in opposition of standing bylaws that already. We've mentioned that, and I'm getting tired of this. When I've mentioned it to the chairman of the select committee about having a joint meeting and discuss this and settle this as to how the budget is gonna be presented, and he has stonewalled me. He has stonewalled me. He tells me he ends up not doing, he's not doing that, but he has stonewalled us on, when we asked to end up getting on the agenda for the stabilization policy that we had, so we could present it. He ended up basically ignoring that request. Instead, he never even got back to me. I had to take and end up speaking to him personally, and it was like, well, we're working on policies. No, we want to take and end up coming before you and present what we have.
You can have policies. We have a whole closet full of policies.
This has gotten to the point where it's totally ridiculous. They keep trashing us, but yet they have not done this community any service. And don't let anybody tell you that they have. They sit up there, and we have some pompous asses that sit there at the inn and call themselves an interim administrator. Like I said, if you read the newspaper articles on this individual, he was run out of a community because he was doing some of the same things, and they actually the town ended up putting a warrant article that they could end up doing away with the administrator's position. That's why they got rid of him in that community. And I mean, these people, the community should know about that. And the selectmen should know about that when they choose an interim. They should know about who they're choosing to take and end up helping run the community, and don't let them run roughshod.
Don't have a heart
He has
attack.
advised them, in my opinion, very poorly.
Jeffrey, can I say something? You know,
Okay, go ahead and then Bernie.
no, okay. We've gone to meetings where we weren't allowed to speak. And I sat there one day and I'm thinking, anyone would know this stuff. If you paid attention to your government, if you went to a meeting, you would know the answer to all these things. They had selectmen sitting there that were lost. There was a day that we did not have an executive person in the Board of Selectmen. Anna Richards ran the Baldwinville office. She was a secretary. The selectmen ran the town. The selectmen should be able to run the town now, but they can't. They're afraid. We are in such a bad shape fiscally. I do not think that this town can last another 4 years without being bankrupt, unless big changes are made. When we have revenue numbers that are no good, because the town does not collect that much money, and then we end up short, why are we in the hole? There is no more money to borrow from. You can't borrow from Peter to pay Paul because Peter's broke and Paul's broke. You can keep eliminating departments, Mickey Mousing things, but you don't have a strong community, and that's what we don't have. You cannot elect people that don't have an absolute solitary clue and come out good. I do hope that the DOR does something about this, because they're the only people I know that can. Unless the community stands up and finally does something. I think they were hurt very badly by the school thing the time that everyone went to the meeting, and after they had said no how many times? It turned into a yes. But you can't quit on your town. If we quit, it wouldn't help our town. If I thought for a minute, if I walked out that door and didn't come back, it would help our town, I'd do it. But I know damn right well it would hurt the town, because nobody would be able to do this job ever again.
If I may.
I'm gonna let Bernie speak, because he had his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You are allowing discussion from the floor?
Yeah, you're a
Oh, absolutely.
taxpayer.
along with your, should this motion pass, and you are going to approach the DOR with our budget process, I would love to see our process for account reporting also added to that discussion. I wrote a 7 or 8 page letter to the head of the Board of Selectmen, along with copies of many different documents supporting some of my questions in my 7 or 8 page letter. The total letter equaled 107 pages.
Wow.
And the verbal answer I got, my letter was asking the question, why can we not abide by our bylaws and have an accountant's report in the annual report? For the past, I believe it's 4 or 5 years, we have not had an accountant's report. I looked forward very much to reading that accountant's report in the past, because it told me a lot, what was going on in town. And that's one thing that the bylaws say, that the people in our town should learn what's happening financially from our accountant's report. Verbally, I was told there is going to be an accountant's report this year in the annual report, the one just passed. And I opened up to the accountant's report section, and there was simply a paragraph, as you probably know, saying that because of the lateness of the 3 past budgets and audits, that they were gonna put it off until July 1st. There would be a supplement written and distributed to the town, to the accountant's report, or to the annual report, giving an accountant's report. That never happened. It hasn't happened yet. I've come in and I've asked about it, and no one's, well, 2 individuals don't seem to know why there's no accountant's report. So I really would encourage the board to add that to discussion with DOR.
There's tons of information that we don't get anymore in the annual report.
Okay,
There's no list of what
All right.
people are making for pays.
all right,
Tons of things are missing.
Along with your suggestion, it's not only a bylaw, it's the Mass General Law. There is supposed to be a report from the accountant and the treasurer. It's just like there's supposed to be a report from the light and water, and there's Mass General Laws about all of those different items, because that's financial, that's a big financial impact on the town. And it's Mass General Law, along with the bylaw that says it's supposed to be there. And as to that supplement, and I'll get your question, Will, Bernie, there was an email that was from the town administrator, that supplement had gone to printing and was going to be, and it was put out at a selectmen's meeting, was going to be available sometime in the fall. I believe September is the month, but that's what I got. It was gonna be in July, and they told you that, and nobody knows what happens to it. It does not surprise me.
That's excellent
But
news, but I
that
don't know
was-
why it takes so long.
There was an email that was supposed to go out to printing, and there was gonna be, and it was also gonna be the report of the advisory committee, because Will submitted the report, 6, 8 pages long, very a lot of the financial transfer stuff done between the Selectmen Advisory Committee, the end of the year stuff, that's not in the annual town report, it's not on the town meeting. They left it out. That is supposed to be also included in that supplemental. I don't know if that's ever gonna happen or not. Yes, Will?
Yeah, to add to that, our report, basically, when it was discussed at the selectmen's meeting, we had a selectman who had been on the advisory committee and also as chairman, and when asked, because it was part of the discussion as to how many pages, he said 1 page. And looking back when he was on, it was never 1 page. The minimum was 2 pages when he wasn't chair, and it was over 2 pages, about 3 pages when he was chairman. And at both of those years had none, 0 end-of-year transfers. We had an abundance amount of end-of-year transfers, which we reported on, and we're supposed to do it by bylaw. The administrator and his assistant took the opportunity to edit ours, even when we resubmitted it, and cut it out. They even didn't want to report on the ones that we looked at and rejected because of what was submitted. In addition to that, no, even the Gardner News, when they reported on the open meeting law against this committee, didn't end up doing their due diligence to report it accurately. And I will end up calling out the reporter on this. I'm surprised that she's not here, because I would end up, I spoke to her on a number of issues that she has left stuff out. The selectmen on 2 of the open meeting laws violations passed there's a 30-day window that you're supposed to file. They weren't filed at the correct time. We, as a committee, could have ended up not even responding to those. We responded to them. And that what we got is we're not gonna pursue them. And like I said earlier, what I've heard is that they didn't pursue it because they had no just cause on having it go to the AG. And if they had gone to the AG, it would have probably come back and they would have looked foolish in the fact that there was no violation at all on any of the ones. I mean, I'm surprised that the reporter didn't end up picking up on the fact that it was past the 31 days. And part of the discussion on those blogs I saw were the fact that they talked about the policies and procedures not being followed. They couldn't even follow the state guidelines on the 30-day policy on filing an open meeting law violation. That's ridiculous. If you can't get selectmen to take and end up doing their in fact, I ended up hearing from the reporter that saw in the newspaper that they had already sent it to the committee. And as chairman, I sat there and said, what do you mean you've sent it to and I talked to the news reporter and I says, we haven't received anything. That's what I was told. Why didn't you check with me to see if we had it? That is not good reporting. And when I end up asking about it at the selectman's office, all of a sudden, we have a chairman that signs it on on Monday, after I asked the question, and send it to us on the Tuesday, well past the deadline. Ridiculous. We have selectmen that can't even do their job on filing open meeting law violations against anybody. And that's a Mass General law. They can't end up following our like you said, follow our bylaws. We can't seem to get them to take and end up filing the bylaws, nor can we get them to take and end up following Mass General laws. And by the way, you're absolutely right about the accountant and what was mentioned about the treasurer. 2 years ago, we brought that up in 2015 at the annual town meeting. I remember reading it because I was given that and I had looked into that and I looked at that report and neither one of those were in the report. I read the Mass General law and the town voted not to accept the 2015 annual report. But they still have it up on the website as though it was actually approved by the town. They were supposed to end up taking and writing something up and resubmitting that. The selectmen have never done that. They have not done their due diligence. And people in this community, if they really want a good community government, need to take and speak up. And they're not speaking up. In talking with some folks about that, they're tired of having things brought up themselves and seeing things brought up, and all of a sudden, what they brought up not to do happens time and time again. So people don't want to end up coming to vote. They don't want to end up getting involved, because if they come to the meeting and they complain, even their complaints are not heard and fully responded on. I was totally surprised on this Winchendon thing that their selectmen listen to their people, and they're going to end up putting before the ballot about sharing their administrator. Where this community, as selectmen, have taken upon themselves to end up driving this. does this community want a part-time administrator? They voted for a full-time administrator over 4 years ago. And these selectmen, most of them have been on there all during this time, have not come through. Have not come through. I'm getting to the point where I have sat back and quietly tried to take and work things, and I'm not gonna take and sit back and not say anything. I don't care what the selectmen think of me. I'm going to end up speaking what the truth is and what's happening in this community. You'll end up hearing them say, we don't like that individual. I know there's a couple of selectmen that have basically said that they don't like me. Why? Because I ask questions and I point things out. They don't like things pointed out of their failings. Well, you know, if you've got some failings and people point it out, you should say, yes, okay, we'll look into that and correct it. To not correct it or just ignore it and get pissed is not the correct way to take and manage a community. It's being run very poorly. I mean, I was in management for a large corporation, and believe me, they were just as political in some aspects as any community. And I worked in that very, very effectively. Trying to take and end up working with this community and these leaders, you can't end up even getting to first base with some of them, like yourself. You presented something to them. He basically ended up whitewashing you. And then we have the spin doctor that's come from another community, and he spins everything to take and make it sound like it. And the words of one person that told me, he makes shit stink. That doesn't stink. He makes it smell like perfume instead of shit. And that's what he's doing. And he's making the selectmen take and end up buying his bull.
Yeah, but in the end,
All right.
in the end,
All right.
it'll
I
all
would
come
like
out in the
to
wash.
amend my motion, which I believe is on the floor,
Yes, it is.
to include, Mr. Heaney, you wanted
The
If-
accountant report.
the account
treasurer's
report process and the treasurer's report, to include that
Yeah.
to the request to the DOR as well.
I was doing that anyway, since I'm
I-
a rogue employee.
Yeah.
And I can provide the board a copy of that letter if you'd like.
Okay, sure.
That would be good.
I would appreciate it.
Thank you.
Because my next step was to find out,
Yes, go ahead.
what legal standing I have as a citizen to follow up on that letter and follow up on them not obeying the bylaws. However, there's a sticky wicket here in that they say they're gonna be providing that information this month.
We'll see if
Well,
it's,
that,
Well, we're still
Fall.
waiting for the FY15 annual report
that was,
to be.
and that was a town meeting, that was a town meeting vote. The people voted not to accept that report because it did not contain the very thing you're questioning about.
Here's an interesting
And this committee
thing.
brought that up.
Here's an interesting point to your question about the bylaws. Do you know who's supposed to enforce them?
Well, I don't.
The selectmen. Or they appoint somebody to take and end up enforcing the bylaws.
So what recourse does a citizen have when the selectmen do
The
not?
attorney
You'll end up having to take them to court.
Actually, in the bylaws, it says that if somebody violates the bylaws, it's a $20 fine, I believe.
gonna cost you
Right.
that in postage. No, it's the principle, it's
Yeah.
our history, that's the thing that bothers me.
Right.
This is our history. I have a stack of town reports that I go back to all the time. I know Jeffrey does too. Anything that's not in there after I'm gone, no one's ever gonna know. And that's not fair, because somebody, your great-grandchildren, or my great-great-grandchildren may say, what the heck happened that time? And when they go to find out, it's nothing there.
It doesn't really, they basically cut out so much of our report that it doesn't show all the activity that we ended up, and the effort that we ended up looking at, the end of the year transfers, and did a lot of homework that they can end up accepting some, rejecting some, pushing back on them to take and end up getting them that they can get the right thing, because some of the things that they tried to end up doing at the end of the year transfers were not appropriate. I mean, I could get into the details, but they
we're not
weren't
on that.
appropriate
We'll
for
be here all
end of
night.
year transfers.
All right, I'd like to move the question, please.
Thank you. All right, we have discussed.
Can I
Yes,
just,
Yes.
Yeah, you
Need
haven't
some
said
help.
anything.
no, I just haven't had a chance to, I just want to make sure I've got the motion correct. So, the motion is to go to the DOR with examples of the budget versus actual report to show the lack of detail and how the town administrator weekly report does not match the actual expenses. Is that, or does not, or disagrees with the?
Well, it just doesn't show the level of detail. If you could give an example that we got last year with all the detail versus what we're getting now.
Right. The end of year 17 has much more detail than the
Right.
the 18,
July.
Yes, It's the
the
first.
18 budget ones
Yes.
starting in July.
Right.
I think the part that doesn't jive is the chart of accounts that shows, the numbers.
Oh, okay,
Right.
well,
In
It's,
the town meeting, it doesn't show.
it doesn't, like, we had a question on the 911 grant last meeting I was at, which wasn't the last meeting, the 23rd, what was that, whatever it was,
okay,
where the allocated amount changed,
okay.
okay? And one of our questions was, how did that allocated amount change?
So,
Okay, so the questions I have is, like, how can all these numbers change? And I think we should go through, even though this is a poorly constructed budget to actual, we should go through it, because there are issues with this one as well, even without the lack of detail. All right, we should go through and see if it matches this sheet, and which number it matches, each account, okay? So we have like a general account for the selectmen, it's the 120 account, okay? On the sheet that was in the budget book, there was $263,109 as the FY18 department request. And then there was another figure, which was the town administrator recommendation, which was $259,500. Allocated, we have a different number. We have $258,750.
Okay.
When town meeting votes on something, that's what should be reflected
Mhm.
on this budget to actual. Not
That's-
make pretend numbers that you just,
Okay, okay,
Corner
so
your
to show the lack of detail and how the allocations do not agree with what was
Voted.
approved during the annual town
Town
meeting.
meeting, right.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, because even on ours, we ended up having an expense budget, including education, in addition to the $50,000 that we put in, it was cut down to 35 by the administrator. And he ended up cutting out some of our expense numbers and for training. And he ended up telling us we should end up putting monies in for training,
yeah, and then they cut it. So-
and then they cut it.
right.
Okay, so on the motion and a second to send that information to DOR.
Is that the extent of the motion, what I just said? Are we asking to add what legal standing a citizen has with regards to getting a response to his report of a violation of the town bylaws? Did we want to make that as part of the same motion, or?
Well, yeah, I amended it, so to
Okay.
include, like,
What
the annual
Bernie said.
town report should have the accountant report and the treasurer report,
Okay,
and the standing, what can a citizen do if the bylaws are violated?
if the select board violates the town bylaws by not publishing the accountant's report. Okay,
Right.
okay.
Okay?
Okay. On the motion, Bev,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Will.
10 times yes.
I second that. Yes.
23.
Not bad for 4 members.
All right. Now, as to this budget versus actual, I went down and I'm looking real quick at the numbers. You know, they say unnamed, and I'm looking at the three-digit numbers.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I noticed, the 610 is library, and supply, purchase of services, it's like 99% gone. It's only $325, so I'm not sure. That must be, maybe like a one-time thing, but it's, like I said, it's not that big of a number, but, again, it just says, you know, they've turned to so much summary, and they used to name these things.
Oh, I think this
That
is
could
what you
be a
call
fee
getting
for,
jerked
I mean,
around.
it could be a fee for a certain thing,
Right.
but it,
Doesn't tell you that.
it doesn't say.
And again, if you look at the 610 totals, it says $74,013, or the town administrator was $76,125. And then if you go to page 4 at the top, it comes to $78,875, which is neither of those numbers. So where are these numbers coming from?
The magic dragon.
Yeah, these are the kinds of things that, like, you know, just kind of drive me nuts, even though there isn't the level of detail. We're not that far into the fiscal year. Whatever was allocated should have been allocated correctly from town meeting.
It can be, and I'm just,
Yeah.
we would have to ask these questions, but, my thinking sort of, and this goes, jumping ahead to the next one, but in the answers from the accountant, such as like the 9/11, she states, because we questioned why the 9/11, the E911 grant was different from the previous one, and the answer is, the auditors were here in August, they gave me detailed tracking. Once it was completed, it showed a significant amount of 911 grant funds were put into the general fund, and the auditors gave me an adjusting entry. I'm beginning to think that all these changes are occurring in that same way. And my take on this is the same take I've had on the audit presentation. They are fixing things just to make everything balanced so they can move forward. Because I recall going to selectmen's meetings, and a lot of the things coming out about that joint meeting we had, 15 in July, that one that we had at the school, where all these shortages and all these things. And then at the presentation, and even when the DOR was here, and some of the emails we've received, we're just, we found a mistake in 2009. We're not going back that far, we're just gonna average it out, or take this number and plug it in, and that's fixed, and we're just gonna say that's clean from here forward. It's not going
Right.
back and finding the errors or what the cause was, and really fix it
Somebody
correctly.
lucks out if they do that.
So, I'm beginning to think that some of these all these small changes here, $200, $300, $400, $1,000, whatever, is just, they're finding these mistakes, and rather than going back through the process and having to maybe perhaps bring it to a town meeting, as we've done on a few things.
Right.
The school vote was, the school funding thing was one of them. If they were done incorrectly or done wrong, and rather than do that, it's almost as if they're going, oh no, just fix it this way, make an
Well,
adjusting entry.
I could
make
be
a
an
correction
accountant if I
this.
could do that.
And just, no,
I
and
could! Hell, oh, there's a mistake,
It's
oh,
the-
I'll
the
just
snow and
swap
ice number
somebody
that was
out.
off.
That's how we got to this mess.
the snow and ice number was off.
Right.
Oh, that
That's
was a
called
key.
creative accounting.
That was a keying area, and the total is still the same. Well,
No.
that's not the issue.
Right.
If there would've been 3,000 less in there, we would've did a transfer and made a number negative.
I'm gonna become an accountant.
making money from there.
I'm gonna become an
It's an
accountant.
assumption, and it's a bad thing to do, but it seems that every time we find these issues, different
You know, and-
allocations, we ask the question, and the answer keeps coming back very similar, if not the same.
Just
Oh,
saying.
I gotta make an
I
adjusting
thought-
entry, it's this or that.
The big audit meeting, okay, that we had in April, in the Kiva, that put us on like a level ground, and from there, we would go forward without all of this crap going on.
Because we had good numbers, good,
Because we
clean
were told
numbers.
we had good numbers, it was good, right? It was good. Everything is wonderful, everything is awesome. That's what we were told, okay? We have issues, we're gonna have to, work on it, but the numbers that we have right now is a clean slate, and we can move forward with these numbers. It looks like they're having trouble closing 17. So that they're doing the shell game again. And I don't think as an advisory committee member that I should just not say anything about that.
I mean, what if somebody walked out the door with a pocket full of whatever? I mean, where did it go?
An
You're
interesting
gonna blame forever and a day, the books were messed up? I think you ought to call somebody in and say, what did you do?
And an interesting follow-up to the statement in that presentation at the auditorium about, okay, now and emails from the accountant and the administrator that we have good, clean numbers and everything is gonna be fine from here going forward. I have read an administrative report, and I've watched couple of the selectmen's meetings that I didn't attend. And the administrator made the point of some account, there was some question about this or that, and he said, well, you're probably going to have these
I
issues
saw
come
that.
up for the next
Few
3 to
years.
5 years or so. You're gonna find this little thing here, or this, because all of the problems and all of the issues you've had with your books, these things are gonna come up. Okay, that's fine, that's a reality, that's an explanation. But don't put out at another public meeting that now we have good, clean numbers and everything is all fine, and going forward, everything is gonna be good. Because clearly, we look at the documents and it's not. And the answers we keep getting, we're making an adjusting entry. Oh, we have a keying issue. Oh, it's just this. Apparently, we don't have good, clean numbers, and everything is not well. And the accountants were supposed to be in and done, and I recall 17 at that meeting, I believe at the audit presentation or one of the selectmen's meetings shortly thereafter. I believe it was at the audit meeting, they laid out all the steps that were gonna happen, all the things
Yeah.
for 17. August is gonna be this done, September this is gonna be happening, we're gonna have a special town meeting, we're gonna have free cash, we're gonna have this, we're gonna have that. In one of the town administrators' reports, the last, not the 22nd, one of the 2 or 3 previous to that. Now, we're gonna have a meeting with the DOR, because we don't have all that stuff done, but we have summations for our numbers, and this is how we plan to go forward. I think the community is being had, and I think things are being whitewashed. And when somebody writes a detailed letter with that amount of information, and that's a lot of stuff to ask a simple question, and he gets to go round, and Mr. Heaney he's demonstrated before that he does his homework with regards to the school stuff. I mean,
Yep.
he did a lot of work before he made the statement, and it was proven true. And 100 and some odd pages to ask that question
And then get blown away.
and get nothing but bull in return, I think backs up some of the points made by this committee as a whole and by members individually. Things are not good, things are not clear, and I really don't trust a damn thing that comes out of the Board of Selectmen's meetings. This, right now, especially with town finance. I just, the administrative selectmen, I just don't trust a word they say on these finances because the paperwork keeps showing
Right.
that
If you worked in a bank,
contradicting to what they say.
Jeffrey,
It's-
if you worked in a bank and your draw didn't come out right, you think the manager is gonna say, oh, that's all right, we'll adjust it? You wouldn't get out the door. Not out the door.
So,
I'd like to look at page 9. Okay, actually, I want to first look at page 7. We'll go back to the E911 grant.
you're confusing me now.
I'm sorry.
Page 7?
Page 7.
Yeah.
For the E911 grant expenses. Right now, the allocated is 78,270.58. I believe at the end of the year, there was 230-something, which was a change from the 138 allocated. And that was said because the grant had never been audited or something, and they needed to put the money there. So I don't know how it was, the allocated, now this is allocated, okay? Your allocated shouldn't change. Your allocated should be what it is, okay? Your ending changes because you expend money from what's allocated. At least that's my very fuzzy understanding of accounting.
And the BVA that had 100-something thousand, and then one that showed 200,000,
Right.
we did not do any transfers
Right,
into or out of, as had been done in the past at
Right.
town meetings. Generally at a special town meeting in the fall, where money had been transferred, but we have not done any of that, and like you say, we've gone from single digit six to 100,000 or so somewhere, to
Right.
200,000, and now we're down
Down to-
below 80,000.
right. So I don't know what it will be next month.
Yeah, we'll have to keep an eye out.
It's,
It's-
as I said,
It's
it's,
another one of those little mysteries.
these are just troubling times financial wise, and it's getting to the point where, maybe that's why people don't bother to show, they just, there's a big trust thing here, but,
You know, I mean, that's something you can show the DOR.
I see a number of issues here, because school resource officer,
What page you on?
page 9, at the
Okay,
very top.
I'm going there too.
Last time I knew, the school allocated $25,000.
because they pay half of
Right.
that, of salary.
Well, on this document, they've got allocated $140.30.
Wow.
But at least they haven't expended any of it, so it's still there. We're at 100%.
Mr. Rosengren is donating
A lot of
his
time.
Uh,
Yeah,
It's,
Yeah. Maybe this is why they wanna get rid of us.
right. I think this is definitely why they want to get rid of us, Bev. All right, my question
thank-
on page 9, one of them, okay, is the Citizens Court Emergency Management Grant, right in the middle of the page. Okay? It says Citizens Core Program Grant 2014. They allocated $4,199, and they expended $7,750, overexpended $3,551.48. Okay? And then, no, that was in 14, okay?
Yeah.
So for the whole emergency management grant is overexpended by 117%. I just, you know, where's this year's grant? I don't know. Because this is emergency management, this isn't even
14,
E911.
15, and 16.
Right. Okay. Then we have the Highway Improvement Fund, Chapter 90, allocated is a negative $12,384.28. That's what's allocated.
Well, I always thought that we.
I thought we had over 300 and something thousand according to the end of the year report. Or more than that. I don't know.
That came from an email, from Senator Goby's office. It's on the DLS website. It's on the governor's budget page. I think it's a tab on the cherry sheet.
Mhm. And I don't think it's a negative number.
No, and it was not,
Not a negative
it was not 10, 12,000.
No.
There's used, because if the annual town, meeting, the article is to accept the amount, monies, given, and that's a
Right.
grant that you spend the money, you provide the paperwork,
Right.
and you get reimbursed, and the
Reimbursed,
bills get
right.
paid from there, but that's, yeah, again, it's, those two items, again, it's more trust, it's more, this information
It
is
brings up the
just-
question about level of detail. Level of detail is, where'd the money go? If you have the level of detail showing where the money went, we wouldn't have all these questions.
Again, it's just, it's getting to the point where,
Just, and just looking over this budget to actual, I went down the list that you gave us from the 2018 budget book,
it's,
and I found 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different departments with figures different than what's on the budget to actual.
Oh, boy.
And I didn't check them all. And that's out of the total, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 others that I haven't checked.
and that is page 6A, the original one was 6, but
Right.
they issued us this, that one meeting we went to
Mhm.
with the department heads, they gave a lot, he passed out one night a packet
Yeah.
of a lot of supplement, because they had corrections, changes, a lot of it was, there'd been some errors in numbers. Some of it was just changes, moving stuff around to equal, but,
But which column are you referring to, Will?
Either one of those.
Okay, so nine.
Take your pick.
And to answer your question, Paul, when I looked at some of the numbers, is either the department request or the administrative recommendation didn't necessarily meet the
See.
budget to
if
actual.
I can find,
Number.
if I can get it.
Okay,
An example, police department asked for 1.379 million, and the administrator said 1,294,000. Huh, if you look at theirs,
I'll try to find.
it's not even close.
What page is that on?
Police department is, let's see,
200?
200, and it shows 1,299,000. That's a $5,000 difference between what the administrator put on and what's on the budget to actual. Where did $5,000 go? That's not even what they asked for.
Where did 5,000 come from?
That's true.
Hey, don't be asking those hard questions now.
Oh, I know where 5,000 came from. It came from the emergency reserve. That's why he reduced it, because he needed it somewhere else probably.
My major problem is that the budget to actual allocated should be what town meeting voted.
Right.
And the only changes that should be made to that is at a town meeting.
Yep.
Okay? And at the end of the year, we can do transfers.
Well, this
I can
administrator has
transfer money.
played around with the figures. He, instead of coming last year for emergency reserve money for a vehicle, he went and used monies out of the highway department that they can end up purchasing a vehicle out of their maintenance. And then, that was just that they can end up showing that the money didn't come out of emergency reserve, so he could end up taking in, ciphering that at the end of the year. Well, if you had put $20,000 more in there, we'd have been over $35,000 out of emergency reserve, which we, typically, we have been at the $35,000 plus over the last amount of years that we've reported. That's why it was requested to have 50,000. And we've granted money for repairs, for ladder, for fire department equipment, and he just basically ended up taking money from somewhere else to end up paying for fire equipment.
Right, I know, that's why we need someone, bigger than us. The DOR does finances, these are finances. This is the kind of thing that they really need, we need help on with, and I think they can help us, and they said they were willing to help us.
Yep.
So, that's why I made the motion that I did. I don't know, are there any other questions on the,
I'm utilizing this here, little device here that's very smarter than me. I'm checking the, annual town meeting from May,
yeah,
and
sorry.
it has the selectmen at 258,750. Now, how that all went from the department request and the administrator, number,
All right, so that's what's in the BVA
yeah.
then.
Again, though,
How did that happen?
these, and this is why, one of the reasons, what was it 2 years ago, with the 16 budget, where we had a separate column, and then when it was put on the town website, it had department request, the administrators, recommendation, the selectmen, the advisory committees, and what town meeting voted. So that was
Right.
easy to see. And also, when you came to the BVA, it had selectmen, it had all the individual things, and boom, 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 you could go through there.
Right,
Like, again, it's the detail, and the lack of it. And it's a lack of information, and again, it's easy to sit up at a table and be recorded, and with people reading the paper, openness, transparency, good governance, this and that. But as they say, the devil is in the details, and the things that we are getting about finance are anything but. Might as well light your wood stove with it, because that's, back in the old days, you might hang it out in this little, building out in the backyard. But,
That's one of the reasons why last year, when we requested electronic copies of all the budgets, we weren't given them. Because we weren't given the opportunity to take and end up seeing that and end up making our recommendations for each of these. We either had to take and end up caving into them, and that's basically my cut at it, is that we were forced into making a majority of the board was forced into making a decision on the budget without the level of detail and our ability to take a look at the numbers and make recommendations. We either had to recommend what the selectmen put forward or nothing, because we didn't have an opportunity to even have a second line on there saying, here's our recommendation. Whether they agreed or disagreed with the selectmen's and the administrator's budget had nothing to do with it. The bylaws call for us to do that. We weren't given the opportunity to do that. Your selectmen keep running roughshod on the bylaws and not allowing town government to run the way it's supposed to, with checks and balances. If that's what this community wants, that's what they got. They were hoodwinked, as far as I'm concerned, into voting for a budget that didn't show the level of detail that they had it previously. And when a motion was made to take it, end up going to the level of detail, you had some people going, no, no, no. They didn't want to sit there and go through the detail, where other years, you know, so I look back at some of the older individuals of this community that went, and I've gone to a number of annual town meetings, they actually sat there and they would end up saying, hold, et cetera, line by line, and go back over it and make changes to the budget. And that's what town meeting is supposed to do. At last town meeting, the town members weren't even granted that ability to take and make those changes. Because they didn't have the level of detail that is necessary for them to even make the changes.
And that is kinda on town meeting, cause one of the things, but again, you have to be aware of this and you have to be vested and interested in it. There is mass general law that at town meeting, they can set the format, the budget format, and how it will be presented for the next fiscal year. That's why, coming up, in the answers to some of our questions, one of the things, the answers was, the response to the question was, well, town meeting voted that format. Just because they voted yes for a budget
Didn't
does
mean
not
the format.
mean that's the
He
that's the
understood it.
format for the next year, because they were not asked that question.
Right.
And I don't think they are aware of that issue.
Sounds like a good
Uh,
citizen petitioner.
Things, and whether this is done intentional or steered this way, but there was a lot of questions on the contracts and a couple other things in people's attention. And again, if it was good governance and open and transparency, especially on the part of the selectmen, and maybe this committee, maybe we should have brought this to the floor, to the people's attention.
I'm never cutting anybody any slack again, ever.
To inform town meeting that they have that right to do that. And again, I'm not sure how you honestly look people in the eye and say, Mr. Citizen, this is the format you voted for just because you passed the budget.
Well,
You approved, you okayed the numbers in front of you.
Yep.
There's nothing about the format. There was no question, do you people like it this way or that way? Do you want more detail? Do you want to do line items? That was not asked, it was not even brought up.
The bylaws, by the way, call for this advisory committee to take and end up spelling on how some of the items should be in the budget. And that's basically every community in this, that I looked at and talked to, folks at the annual, Association of Town Finance Committees, when I've talked to the folks that worked in other communities, that's how it works. And when I tell them on what has transpired, they can't believe that the folks in this community allow things to be run that way. They basically end up saying that you should be getting input as to how the budget is supposed to be, and whether you end up, what guidelines you want for this coming year. Tonight, the selectmen are sitting there, are going to take and end up talking about goals in the budgets for this coming year over the next couple of months in their retreat. Their retreat at the fire station, where they hopefully didn't want to take and end up having anybody go to tonight, and end up having another lunch like they did the last retreat, paid for by the citizens. And if the citizens knew that, they'd be a little perturbed, because Bev and I went there and we saw them end up. And then they basically said, oh, that's because we had somebody come in and talk. Well, I don't buy that. I mean, you don't end up doing that. There is no budget item that says that we're going to end up paying for somebody to take and come in and pay for a lunch where they end up talking about stuff.
But what was good about that meeting was I realized how little the people that run our town know. And that is scary.
Right, and that meeting tonight, if they and they have said, well, we want to work with the advisory committee. If that's truly what they want to end up doing, why wasn't it a joint meeting that they can end up talking about some of this stuff? They basically wanna take it into controlling on how things are going, and that's really what it's come down to.
Well, when I got the message that we were supposed to go along to get along, I knew there was gonna be a problem, because there's no way on this earth that I will do that. If I don't feel something's good for the community, I'm not gonna vote for it. Never, ever.
Well, some of the things that the chairman, the select board chairman has said to me about, well, we'll let the AG end up firing you, forcing resignations.
Well, let 'em
Well, if
come.
that was really true, how come they didn't push the open meeting law? And they basically,
I told Carter that tonight. I met him before the meeting, and I said, how kind of you. Now you've decided to let this go. I don't think you should do that. I think you should go forward with it. So the whole town will know whether we horrible people have done these terrible things. Oh, we're gonna let, I said, very nice of you. Thank you very much. But I don't think that's right.
well, you talk to the spin doctor, like I said, he spins, I've seen this happen in business, and he's basically a spin doctor.
Well, it don't matter. So what we gotta do is do our best for the people of this town.
On the budget versus
Bottom line.
actual, I'm not sure if Will's gonna be back in the seat or not, but I would, if he is, I would request an agenda item on the BVA again.
Yep.
And I would like to, I'll make copies, I'll look in the FY18 budget book that we had. With this page, I'll go by through the departments and see, I believe there's another page in there with other numbers. And I'll also make a copy of the town meeting page that has all the expenses for the different departments. And maybe we can, with the BVA and the paperwork from the budget book and the town meeting, maybe we can find the answers to how these numbers have changed. And if not, I guess that would be some questions we could forward up and see what kind of interesting responses we get.
I added up
So if
the
there's no-
supplies, Jeffrey, I added up the supplies that are listed on the budget versus actual. Came to 45,250. And I'm gonna look and see what we had down for town meeting.
So
What
if
that
it-
was, if I can find it.
If there's nothing else on the
No, that's it.
budget versus actual document, that will be done. Now, we had some questions from our last meeting to the accountant. And actually, before, I was sitting there writing up, I was gonna forward the questions again to Kelly, because I wasn't sure if she had been out on vacation, whatever, and I was gonna CC Carter when the answers showed up. And I printed it out, so everybody has a copy. And as I've already made reference to earlier, the question about the format of the expenses with the lack of detail. And like, for instance, the insurance one is just says benefits and insurance. You no longer see, the health insurance, and if it's been paid in full, we don't know that. And I said, if they pay that in full, like in July, it saves, you're in the tens of thousands of dollars. It's a good chunk of money versus paying it over the year. So that was the answer with the new budget format for fiscal 18. Please review the chart of accounts in your book. These are the new accounts that are being used for fiscal 18. Our second question was, we had that meeting where we were transferred, we were asked to do a transfer for insurance. They took money out of the selectman's office expense, and they wanted to put money back in there. And that was gonna be for the the 64,608 that was put in the selectmen's office expense, and it was gonna stay there until town meeting, and then it was gonna go to an other post-employment benefits, which is the OPEB, which is mainly health insurance for retirees. They were gonna set up an account and put that money in there, and it can't be touched, except for those benefits.
In addition to that, Mr. Vice Chair, the town voted that the year after that, another $60,000.
This is my.
So there's actually 124,000
Well,
plus.
There should be. And that was my question, was about the OPEB funds. Money was appropriated at 2 town meetings to place money in that fund, but there was no apparent accounting. She accounted for the 64,608, but not the other one. I don't know if they aware of that, or just chose this one to give us the answer.
I think she would have given us
It's the same
both of them.
answer. I asked this question, I sent it to the accountant, to the treasurer, an email on my own, a year or so ago. The new OPEB trust account, can be opened, but again, this fell on the treasurer, and it was not done. There was some blah, blah, blah explanation. It said this should take place in this fiscal year with the new treasurer collector in place. Again, it's kind of a partial answer in my opinion, but, because it does not account for the 2 transfers, the 2 appropriations for OPEB. It was not just 64,608. There was a second town meeting, there was money appropriated. Where is that money at? There should be more than 64,608 in there, and it's not 74,608. It should be over 100,000 in there. And why has this not been done?
I don't know.
You know,
What do you do? Leave it in your desk drawer?
again, that's,
A lot of money.
it's back in 16, 17, and here we are in 18, fast approaching, to start discussing the budget of fiscal 19. The next question was the E911 grant. The fund balance and allocated amount changed from the previous budget versus actual, given to the committee for an end-of-the-year transfer. What is the reason for the differences? And again, this was, I mentioned this earlier, but when the auditors were here in August, they asked me to do a detailed tracking on the 911 grant and the dispatch expenses in the general fund. Once this was completed, it showed a significant amount of 911 grant funds were put into the general fund. And the auditors gave me an adjusting entry to correct this. Again, this seems to be a repeating, reoccurring, keep happening, whatever adjective, however you want to state it. Whenever we seem to ask a question about, there's differences in finances, things that don't match up, we found this problem with this thing or this thing, the auditor said we're making an adjusting entry. It's getting,
This goes back to when we brought up the point about dispatcher wages not having enough money in it to get
yes,
to the end of the fiscal year. So,
is
that,
correct.
we're gonna take it out of E911. Well, apparently, it looks like you shouldn't be doing that, because then you make an adjusting entry, because it went to the general fund, and it shouldn't have done that, so,
And that goes back to what we were told, or at least it was put out at a selectmen's meeting, from Bob Markle, that, actually, it was a couple of meetings. It might have been one joint meeting, but, we have been using 911 grant for salaries for a number of years and other things. And we had to stop doing that, or the town was gonna get in trouble. I did look at the law and the uses of 911 grant, and there is a thing in there where it can be used for salaries, but I believe that's an area where I think there has to be certain criteria. It's sort of along the lines where there is a grant, and this gets off of this question, but there is a grant for senior services and it's very specific. And a few years back, a senior director of the senior center, gave themselves a raise by using that grant money, and that was improper. And that's how easy it is for, these things to happen. Again, the town was told via a selectmen's meeting that if we keep using the 911 grant for this and for that, we're gonna get into trouble, so we have to stop, which I thought was a good thing. I never liked, it's, again, we gotta take money out of the dispatch salaries to cover these expenses, and these expenses. Now we're taking the 911 grant to cover the salaries. Well, to me, that indicates you don't have enough money to start with to run things, or to have the things that you keep putting on the table. So, they've made an adjusting entry.
Yeah, wait a minute.
I don't know how that fixes anything other than you change numbers on the paper.
I thought there was a hooker that if you didn't use all the money, you had to give it back.
You do.
Okay,
That's
so what
what
if
the law
they turn
says.
around and say, we want the money back that you put in the general fund?
Well, and then it goes back to the fluctuating numbers that we had allocated.
Yes.
Where's that coming from?
It was 100 and something, and then it was 238, and now it's 78.
And when we originally
Lot
asked
money.
that question, we got, if I recall correctly, we kinda got a runaround
Right.
answer.
This
And it
is-
took a while.
Yeah.
It's, it should be, I mean, if it's this, you should get an answer rather quickly, because it doesn't seem very complicated to explain. Here's the explanation. It's almost as if, oh, wow, they asked us this tough question, we gotta come up with an answer, let's see, and it's like they work on an answer to give you
Sure.
that's,
Right, that they
it
think
shouldn't-
you're
the-
gonna forget
the
other
time,
questions.
the time it takes to ask the question and get an answer. I mean, if this is the answer, and it seems rather simple, it shouldn't take 2 weeks to respond. I just,
But just
And,
think, what if they decide they want their money back? What the heck do we do then? Who knows how much it is even?
Well, if we don't get free cash certified for this annual special town meeting in the fall, they've gotta cut 211,000 out of this FY 18 budget.
anyways. The last one was the air pollution control funds, excuse me, that the budget versus actual showed had been 116%, so that's, 16% overspent. The answer from the accountant was, this account has no impact on the budget versus actual. I don't know why it's in there if it doesn't have any impact, but at the beginning of the year, and this is the accountant speaking, I take the numbers provided by the state and do actual entries each month. This one was over what the numbers were at the beginning of the year. These numbers are not voted, but on the recap. Again,
Pass the buck.
to emphasize, this has no impact on the town's financials, just how the DOR requires us to track the state offset expense on paper.
Isn't this air pollution fund a charge against the community? It's an offset against what they end up giving us from the state, is it not?
I think so.
I have
I
no
believe
idea.
you are
That's-
correct.
That's
and
my understanding of that. So how is it not an impact? It would reduce the amount of state aid. If it reduces the amount of state aid, it's an impact on the budget.
All right, I would like to make a motion to include forwarding these questions with the responses to the DOR.
I'll second that one.
Do you want to amend the original one or do a new one here?
Well, we'll do a new one.
All right.
We have to have something in the minutes.
Motion to include the accountant's answers.
My question, Mr. Vice Chair, is when you sent that out, are you going to send it to the regional office in Springfield or as the primary and secondary to Ms. Handy in Boston?
My primary is to Miss MJ Handy, Director of Bureau of Accounts.
Okay, thank you.
It will be CC'd to several people at DOR, DLS,
in Springfield?
It includes the Springfield office, but mainly all the people that attended that meeting, that we were there with the selectmen, the DOR, DLS people. I start at the top and go down the bottom and send it, CC our DOR rep, but the main end will be to MJ Handy.
The
Who
way
might
I
send
look
many-
at this is the absolute time that we have got to get our finances straight. We cannot go playing games any longer. If we are in a hole, we need to know it, and we need to know it soon. And people are going to have to make some hard choices, and that's what has happened, is that people have played games trying to make everything look good. But if you pick up the blanket and you got bed bugs, you got a problem.
So, those are the answers that we received from the questions that were submitted by the committee and voted on for me to ask.
Maybe we should be asking the accountant to show us the vote where the town voted for the new account numbers at the annual town meeting. Since she's changed the budget to actual, I'd like to end up seeing the actual vote, the motion and the vote that changed the way we report budget to actual.
So is that a motion?
I'll make that as a motion.
I'll second it.
Because I don't remember voting for something like that at annual town meeting.
No, there's a lot you don't vote for anymore. Yes,
Okay. So we have a motion and a second.
We didn't vote on
We
the
have to
last
vote on the
motion.
last one, the letter to the DOR
Yeah.
about the responses to our questions. I
That's
shouldn't
the motion that you just made, correct?
She had made a motion to
Right.
Yeah.
submit
That's what
that.
I mean. So we have a motion and a second.
Right.
And any further?
Nope.
All right. Bev,
yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Will,
Yes.
and yes. And it may have something here from Mr. Heaney when we get to the special town meeting.
But I made another motion also, Mr. Chairman, sticking the, asking the
Right.
accountant.
For the,
You have a motion and a
change.
second.
All right. So we've done that one. Did you get all that?
Yes.
Just wanted to be sure we can do this one.
I'm ready.
Okay. Now, on the last motion, to ask a question of the town accountant on where is the town meeting vote, where is the record to change the budget format and budget versus actual. Okay,
Yes.
any discussion?
Yeah, the warrant article plus the vote.
I think you should CC the Attorney General on that. I'm sick of this. I'll go down in flames.
Okay. All right, no discussion?
Nope.
All right. This is on Will's motion. Bev,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Will,
Yes.
and yes. All right. So it's, three things for me to do.
You got a proposed SMT?
Okay, yes.
Is that,
Yeah, that's where,
this is last year's. This maybe should be on the new business, Mr. Vice Chair.
this is supposed to be. Attached is the latest draft of the warrant for the fall town meeting after review by town council.
Dated September 22nd, last year.
2017.
Unless he made a goof.
Right church, wrong pew. It's all right, Jeffrey.
Why did they throw?
Long, hard day, honey.
Oh, that was a good catch, though. So for the proposed special town meeting coming up, it's, I wanna say, I think it's November.
Yep.
Like, the 7th or something?
Bernie, throw away the,
All right,
The
why does
report.
this say October 20th, 2016?
I
Draft.
don't know. It was the last on the list.
All
Like I
right.
said, Will just caught the 16.
Right,
where'd you find this?
Those are articles, if you look at those articles from last year.
right.
It's all, but it was
Where how'd you find this, Jeff?
it was under the town administrator reports, the last one on the list today.
All right.
I'm gonna see if I can, but the fall town meeting that's coming up, I believe it's supposed to be November 6th or something around there.
Have they opened and closed the warrant?
I don't believe so.
All right.
I have some.
We
I have
will
some
just have to
questions.
keep that in mind, because we will have to do a pre-town.
Yep.
Yep.
So
And advertise.
we may have to have a meet on an off day,
Yep.
you know, call a
Right,
unscheduled
special town meeting, they have to get it to us at least 14 days before.
So, that would be, knowing them, it'd be like in October, so I mean,
Yep.
it may be, we may have to, you or I, whoever's,
Yep.
it may be like a quick one, as far as notice,
Mm-hmm.
you know, hey, we may have to meet like next Tuesday or whatever to meet
All right.
our deadlines.
I'm sorry, when did you say it's scheduled for?
I'm gonna
We
try,
think
I believe it's in November. I'm gonna see if I can,
While you're looking at, Mr. Vice Chair, might I have a question that maybe for
yes.
somebody on the committee knows? I believe the elementary school building committee was supposed to be opening bids. Is anybody aware of what the bids, if they had done that already, or is that the upcoming meeting? And if they did open the bids, does anybody know what the bids were? Because I haven't seen anything in the newspaper.
I know in the budget to actual, they expended 85,000 out of the account. So that must have been for the bids, because that's about what it would cost to send out all the bid packages and the
Bids,
subs.
said the big
Yeah.
pack, that's a lot of money.
It is. Yes.
But I was just wondering what the bids were that had come in for the school.
They haven't gone to the Conservation Commission yet, so that should prove interesting.
Because I also have another question, is that at the last special town as well as the annual town meeting, we put in at least one, if not two requests for changes in the bylaw. One was to take it end up going before the voters, to take and see if they wanted to change the date of
Yeah, it's not.
the annual town meeting from a Saturday back to a Tuesday, like there had been previously. I know the committee discussed that, and it was rejected by the selectmen, whether the committee wants to end up doing that as a committee, or to end up seeking other means than putting that as a citizen's petition. I think there was one other one that we had.
Yeah, I can't remember. We
Well,
did-
citizen petition for a special, I think it's over 100
It's 100 signatures.
signatures. So if that's something we want to do, we should get the format of the question
Right.
and stack it.
That's why I asked whether the committee wants it, they can end up resubmitting again this year, or have it go out as citizen petition, since the selectmen rejected it last time.
Well, I think citizen petition is the way to go. Anything we put forward, they change or don't include everything or don't put it on, so.
Yep.
A citizen's petition to do what?
To change the annual town meeting from the Saturday back to Tuesday.
So the last one, town administrator's report was 8:31.
Right, so I don't think this is right.
No.
I can't find it right now. I know it was in one of the weekly reports.
I know one of our past members had brought that up,
Yeah, because
uh,
of
yeah.
his,
because he could not attend on a Saturday.
Yep.
Even as chairman, he couldn't attend.
nine eight, there it is. It's at the top.
9/8/2017?
I will look for that,
Up hand.
I'll look for that date. It was proposed, it was in November
I can look back and see some of the stuff I have on the,
thing. But just, we need just to be aware of that and,
Okay, so we think it's around 11.
I believe.
Well, if we do a citizen's petition, then we can talk to people when we get signatures, and I think that's a good thing to do, because then you can explain to them why you're doing it, and they have a better understanding, and I think they feel more included in the town, you know?
So,
The younger people really need to stand up, because it's their town, and what happens at town meeting affects their pocketbook.
Well, what was the purpose of, what's the advantage of changing it from Saturday to a Tuesday?
during some of those years that we've had it on a Saturday, the amount of attendance has dropped, unless there's been just one major thing brings up. But typically,
Right.
you don't have, good attendance on a Saturday.
But logically, you would
In-
expect you'd have better attendance
No,
on a
it's because they're
Saturday.
gonna cut their grass.
Well,
That's all because of that,
Spring.
with the time of year it is, people are out doing their thing. As far as if it's a nice day, they don't wanna be in
Inside.
during the day
mhm.
at peak times when they could end up doing something, where in the evening, they're not necessarily doing peak things, yard work, et cetera, at that time of year.
One time we had the
Vacations, et
town,
cetera, I mean, there's a lot of negatives that go along with
we
that.
had the town, yard sales, so people were running from house to house, they didn't go to town meeting. And for some religious people, Saturday is their Sunday.
Right, one year it ran into the fact that they had the townwide yard sale
on
the same day as the annual town meeting.
It was rough.
This
They go
last,
to town
this
meeting.
last year, fortunately, that they didn't have it on the same day.
Yeah.
And I've heard some people saying like, I'm not gonna go to an annual town meeting and sit there for 3 or 4 hours on a nice day when I could be out
It was
going to the beach or wherever.
on the side.
On this one?
I think I found what happened. I think this was put in the wrong year.
Okay.
okay?
I had it on, it was on the bottom of the big list, and
Yeah, no,
I
it's
said I
over
was-
to the side.
it was, like 5:30, 5:35, something I saw.
Yeah.
8:22, I said, damn.
So it looks like it's
Yeah.
whoever, they just put it in the wrong year, so.
So it
So
happens
it's
when
no
I
good or
rush.
it's good?
No, this is not,
A lot of
this
communities,
is
to
really
answer
from
your
last
question,
year.
Paul, a lot of communities
Thought.
have gone back to during the week rather than on the weekend. And they limit on how long the meeting is on that evening, number one, and they may have it over. I mean, we've gotten to the point where we're not going 4 and 5 nights. The amount of warrant articles used to be 60 to 70 plus. It's down in the 30 to 40 range, which is half the time.
and nobody cares
Last
about the
year-
budget, they don't even want a
Last year, we
discussion.
were able to
Quick.
get through
That's what, yeah.
the annual town meeting in 4 hours. 4 hours on one evening, by 11 o'clock, you'd be done. Especially if there was not a controversial item like there was at this last year. If there had not been a controversial item, it would have been probably done in less than the 4 hours.
But they don't know what they're voting for, because everything's hid. It's a really, really bad way to present the budget to townspeople.
Well, if you
Because
put
when they
the,
look at it, it doesn't tell them anything.
They don't
if you
care.
put it on the warrant, people have
I don't think they
an
know
opportunity to
that
vote
there is
for
a
it.
different way.
If they do, they do. If they don't, they don't, and they'll continue to stay on a Saturday anyway. And even if they vote that they can change it, it doesn't change till the next year anyway.
All right, does anyone have anything under old business?
On the old business, I'd like to take and end up seeing the proposal that Paul, end up the slide proposal, that they can be brought up and discussed, and to end up bringing that forth and request getting on the selectmen's agenda.
For their next meeting, which is what, next month?
While bringing up, if we want to take and end up reviewing it again at our next meeting and bringing it up to the selectmen, the first meeting in October or whatever. Give them plenty of time.
So our next meeting would be the 20th?
It'd be the 20th, yes. Unless members want to take and end up having before that or after that.
Doesn't bother me anytime. Not going anywhere.
Well, I'm starting a course on Wednesdays, but it's not every Wednesday.
Because even though
So I'll be
the
late.
selectmen have a retreat this evening, they have a selectmen's meeting on Monday.
We do.
Mhm.
By the way, they have an I've never seen this done, to take and end up having a retreat and have a potential executive session, tells me there's something else going on in the community that they don't want people to know, especially going to the fire station as a retreat. I'm hearing that there's litigations out there that they don't want the townspeople to know about.
Those are
Nick?
supposed to be in the annual report, you know.
Pardon me?
Litigation is supposed to be in the annual report.
Okay, so for,
The next meeting is the 20th, is that what we said?
Yep.
yes.
Okay.
All right, so
Oh, I got it.
So I'd like to take and end up having us review that and then
Yep.
bring it forth to the selectmen.
Sounds like
And
a
then
plan.
again, is to end up at least voting again as to the stabilization, is to make a presentation. We can end up doing, under old business, we can end up voting that this evening, I believe, to request to get on to the selectmen's agenda, maybe not Monday, but the following selectmen's meeting
That would be,
would be 2 weeks from this coming Monday, which would be
the 25th.
11th. That'd be on the
Like the
25th. Is that correct, Julie?
Yep.
25th?
Yep.
Yeah, should be.
is to take and end up talking about stabilization.
There was a really good article in the Telegram today. I was so busy, I got home late. I had to feed Bart and the cats. But it was about Worcester and the free cash they've got. And what they do is they break it down and they put a big chunk of it into stabilization.
Yep.
And I forgot what else, but it was on, I think it was on the front page of the paper too. They have like $1 million in free cash. Oh my God, wouldn't that be wonderful?
The town of Westminster has 5 stabilization funds. One is general stabilization, capital stabilization, building and ground stabilization. I can't remember what the other 2 are. They had a total of 5. I was truly impressed with the town of Westminster, and they're not that much larger than us.
In the 70s, we set up stabilization for like the highway department. It was like 3 or 4 different ones, and it lasted about a year because we ended up, we've never had a budget that we followed. So they ended up taking the money for something else. When the light company stopped coughing up $100,000 a year,
It'll go.
Are
they
you
were
on that one?
using that plus.
Business?
Yes.
We've never had a budget.
This
All right.
bringing up new business?
Yes.
On the new business,
So, wait, excuse me,
Wait, he's
Okay.
got a,
Mr. Chairman, I just
Paul's
wanna
got
make sure I got the.
I'm sorry.
he's got,
Battery was dying.
his technology went south.
Yeah.
So it's like your pen running out of ink, so you gotta have a spare.
He ran out of it.
Come on, come back.
Maybe they pulled the plug.
Phew.
It's so much easier if you use a clicker.
Well, it's not working either way. There it is. Okay. Let me save. I'm sorry, so on the old business, it was the review, that presentation at the next meeting, like the 20th?
Yes.
Yes.
For final edits to get onto the agenda for the selectmen's meeting on when?
Maybe
October,
their
first one in October.
Probably.
In October.
And the other was about the stabilization, whether we vote on, as far as old business, to present that'd be a separate motion.
Is this a motion or just something we're putting on the agenda?
Right, that's, right.
Okay.
But the motion I will make is to take and end up bringing forth a request to the selectmen to take and end up getting on their agenda to take and make the stabilization policy presentation to them. On the 25th.
Motion to present stabilization policy to select. On the 25th of this month,
Yes, that's
Yep,
correct.
September 25th.
okay.
I will second that motion.
Second. Lee. Okay.
Made the motion, she seconded.
All right.
I'm all set, yep.
Everything all set? Okay. On Will's motion and seconded. Any further? Bev,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Will,
Yes,
and yes. Anything else on the old business? New business.
Mr. Chairman.
Anything else?
Yes.
You're
Busy
no end
individual.
over here.
Take a couple days off and dang.
Absolutely.
You come back firing. You're
Well,
slowing down there,
I
boss.
regenerated. In reading the headlines from Orange, well, it's the Athol paper. Orange is now looking for an administrator. Their selectmen have chosen to end up doing the interviewing of the candidates. It's also, to me, if you look at the size of Orange and the size of Templeton, they're approximately the same.
Yep.
They're around 8,000 or so, a couple hundred, one way or the other. Maybe our selectmen should be looking at Orange, that they can end up sharing an administrator with Orange. If they're still on the path for sharing. I truly believe they should end up getting a permanent administrator full-time, but if they're on the path of sharing, and it doesn't look like Winchendon is going to be a viable option, even though they are continuing,
Pushing it, but I don't think it's gonna happen.
because the citizens, it seems that the citizens in that community, and rightfully so, if I had a community that was in trouble and I had an administrator such as Mr. Hickey doing a slam bang dunk job for me,
I wouldn't wanna lose it.
I wouldn't wanna lose any time for him to end up being part-time in any community other than my own.
Yep.
But if they're still hell-bent on sharing, Orange is a prime candidate that they probably should investigate.
So
But we
is
don't
Hubbardston.
we don't have selectmen that have the foresight to do that. Maybe we have to end up using the carrot approach, and if the carrot approach doesn't work, that they can end up pulling him along and suggesting it. Maybe we use the stick approach on him and let the entire community know that there's another possibility for the community. Since they can't get their act together, they have had 4 years since this town ended up voting for a full-time administrator. All we have gotten is part-time, not necessarily top
Quality.
echelon ones,
No.
in my estimation. I've seen some other communities, such as Lancaster,
We've gotten
that
hurt
had
by them guys.
had an interim administrator that was doing it part-time, and I understand that they tried to get him full-time from the articles that I've read. And I look at other communities such as Leicester also, who has gone out for town administrators and done a wonderful job of recruiting on them.
Well, especially where the new budget for 19 is being formed, it would be so good to have someone that is here to baby it along. It's being formed, and this would be their budget that they have to live with.
Well, I've heard people say, well, you gotta take it, end up paying.
We-
Well, when you got over $110,000 allocated for salary, and some of the perks that they also had in the budget, which probably add another $20,000 to $30,000, to me, that should be an incentive to end up getting an administrator. Basically, when I have talked to some administrators or coordinators in the past, they look at some communities like ours and see the problems, and they look at it as a challenge that they can turn that around.
Aren't we paying as much or more than the mayor of the city of Gardner?
Just gonna say
Yes.
that. Yeah,
Oh, wow, just throw more money. That doesn't make any sense.
you know, there comes a time when you just have to, the selectmen are going to have to make a decision. And they're going to have to follow through. I don't know why they have to drag this process out when it really does not look very hopeful with Winchendon.
No, it doesn't look.
You know, I thought, well, why not try it? You know, when it first came up.
Yep.
But when all of those people came to the selectmen's meeting with Winchendon and voiced their concerns, and they're not for it, you know, they voted to put it on the special
Ballot.
town meeting in the fall.
That's November, isn't it? For
Right,
them.
so, you know, we're wasting all of this time. I don't think the Collins Institute was a good
Mm-mm,
avenue for this community,
no.
all right? I just, you know, I was on school committee for a long time, and there's the Mass Association of School Committees, and they have a subcommittee that, you know, recycles superintendents of schools. And that's what they do. And that's what the Collins Institute does for,
God
Town
bless
administrators.
anybody that gets the guys we've had, oh.
you know? I've also heard through the grapevine that there were other candidates who didn't make it forward to be presented to the Board of Selectmen from the screening committee. So, you know, it's time for the selectmen to really do their job.
Well, one of the things, Julie, is that I attended the meeting where our newest selectman was not for, especially after getting turned down by Winchendon, was not for going forward with it, and he would like to take and end up seeing us actually go for a full-time administrator. There's other items that I don't necessarily agree with the gentleman, but on this particular one, he was right on point, and he could not get the other selectmen to take it, end up going. They continued to take it, end up wanting to go to Winchendon, because they hadn't, I don't know what their issue is, but one of them said, well, we've tried a number of times.
No, they
How
really
hard
haven't.
have you tried to take and end up getting it?
They didn't try, there was a screening committee. They need to take control of the process and
Right.
own it. That's what they need to do.
Well, you see other communities, actually, the selectmen end up
Right,
being in the screening committee.
right.
So what was there, something about they want to train somebody?
I don't know what this intern training thing is.
That's crazy, because you know they're going to go, they're gonna leave as soon as they get a little bit of knowledge under their feet, and then we'll be left high and dry again.
Well, it's like the police grants. They give you a grant to hire a police officer.
Yeah.
They
he's
pay the
gone
first
in a
year,
week.
and then the second year, they pay 60%, and then the next year, you own it, the police officer. And by then, the town is in financial straits, so you've spent a lot of money
A lot of it,
and invested in a person, and
they
you have to
leave.
let them go, because you don't have the budget for it. It's the same kind of thing. We're a training ground.
And the bottom line is, if we don't find somebody that will use real figures for revenue, we will never, ever, ever get straightened out. You cannot spend money that you do not collect. And what did Carter call it? Our philosophical differences? Philosophical, my foot. If you get $1 and you spend $1.25, where's the quarter coming from? So unless you use real numbers for revenue, and I believe that is one of our big problems, if we only make X amount of money, that's only what we can spend. I don't care how big you want things to be. You can't do it. It's not a credit card mentality we have here. And I know that's why we've been in a hole for years.
All
No,
right,
you need, yeah, you need somebody
that it?
that's gonna stay.
Is that it under new business?
Yep. Before we get ourselves run out of town on the rail.
Well, it has come to that time that everybody loves, that we all look forward to. Well,
Good night,
most of us.
sweetheart. Good night. Need to go home and eat supper?
We have reached the end of the agenda, and if there is nothing else,
No.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'm glad you came tonight. You know that?
Bev, I already
I was
wrote
gonna
Oh, I'm
sing that.
sorry. All right. I'll second it. Bev says it.
No,
I'll
no, no,
second it, okay?
I was gonna sing the Howdy Doody song they do at the end
The
of the show.
kid
but I
doesn't know who
forgot it.
Howdy Doody is. Oh,
When we move our meetings to JK Crossroads and we have cocktail hour, we'll sing Howdy Doody.
yeah, he doesn't know what Howdy Doody was.
We'll teach him.
Oh, my.
All right,
Lord.
motion to
The kid
adjourn and
there.
seconded. All those who wish to go
Jeff?
home?
Aye.
Aye.
The-
All
Aye.
those
Aye.
opposed? Just me.
No, the
Okay.
cameraman.
Good night all, and thank you very much for coming.